I think we are ready for the second part of the show. Welcome everybody from my side as well. Thanks for the sponsors. Pizza Hut is my favorite. Ask anybody who's there at lunch. Best value to stomach ache you can get. Awesome. So my name is Karl. I'm here to talk about containers in Microsoft Azure. Interesting. A couple of words about myself. I do not have a container orchestrator background. I am not a contributor. I think the only thing I've contributed to open source is a couple of maybe typos in the documentation. And I have once tried to push through a very small project internally from a small project in a large organization, and went through all of the pain and legalese that it indulged, and my golly, oh no, never again. But during free time, that's all for me. So during daytime, I am actually a cloud and cybersecurity consultant at Composer, and I run the Azure user group here in Finland, and I also organize the IgluConf Azure conference. And I occasionally host a podcast called Cloud Gossip. I talk about, for example, containers in there. So my point of view is really as an outsider coming from the Azure and seeing what is this Kubernetes doing here in my Azure cloud and what can I do about it. With that, quick agenda. This is very open for Q&A, so please stop me, please ask questions. If I don't notice you, try again. After that, it's either I intentionally don't notice you or then try again. And I'll do really brief history, then briefly about overall containers in Azure, and then Kubernetes in Azure, and hopefully even time for some demos, and let's see how those go. So this is typically where we started. So what is this Microsoft Cloud and what is this open source thing doing here? And well, this hasn't been the story this hasn't been the truth for a while now. Luckily, after at least one CEO change a couple of years ago, when Satya came as a CEO for Microsoft, everything started to slowly change to the outside world as well. I was happy to notice that we had the same artist for some of our, not for this, but the Gophers on my first slide as Lucas. The creator, mother of Gophers, who builds them, Ashley McNamara, is actually one of the many cloud advocates that has joined Microsoft in the recent years, together with, for example, of course, Brendan Burns. So the world is really different here. I have a couple of those noted here. As I mentioned, Brendan Burns, the co-founder of Kubernetes, joining Microsoft a couple of years ago, and then just recently Gabe Monroy together with the Days team. And they're actually made a huge push towards open sourcing a lot of the providers, a lot of the tooling that Microsoft is doing themselves relate to Kubernetes as well, not just building the platform for building platforms, but the tooling and platform for building those platforms as well. So it's really interesting to see this kind of change in this company. So containers in Azure. There is several different container services inside Azure. The naming confusion is not just a CNCF issue. At Microsoft, there is a lot of confusion related to those. The easiest one to get started is really the Azure Container Instance. That's basically containers as a service, not to be confused with the containers service below there. The Azure Container Instance lets you create an instance of a container with just a single line. So basically the middle line that I have in here, AZ container create, resource group, the name of my container, pull down the image, what size of a CPU, how many CPUs, what size of memory, Do I want an external IP address? What port is it exposed to? And bam, I can run that matter of maybe 10 seconds or so. I get a new container running for me. And that's actually something that you can all try yourself and see how many typos can you make in one line. It's actually quite easy to get started on that. Quite costly, so I won't run my production workloads in there, but I can actually plug my kube masters actually to deploy my application in a Azure container instance. So instead of deploying to a huge Kubernetes cluster that I have, for some maybe test and development, maybe smoke tests, whatever, for some temporary scenarios, I can actually use the Azure container instances as my Kubernetes nodes. Interesting. That's the serverless part of the Kubernetes that Lucas talks about. And the project related to that is nowadays called the Virtual Kubelet. They changed the name a couple of times. It was Open Service Broker for a while when they launched it at KubeCon. Then there is the Azure Container Registry, obviously for your private registry. That's a little bit better value for money. It's, I think, €5 a month or so with 10 gigs of private repository for your container images. And then there is this service called Azure Container Service. And with that, you can actually pick your own orchestrator, but what it is actually it's just pre-built templates, pre-built tools that lets you create a cluster of virtual machines and pre-configured orchestrators installed on those clusters. It's just an easy way to get started, but in the end it's just the template. You still do all of the managing yourself. Then there is another service called Azure Container Service. And I abbreviated here a little bit better. Actually, it is Azure Container Service, open apprentices, Kubernetes, or preview, or managed, depending on which day of the UI that you are looking at. But basically, if you look for Azure Kubernetes Service, that is abbreviated AKS, not Azure Container Service, ACS, then you should find this. And this is the more interesting one. This is the Kubernetes Masters as a service. This is the managed Kubernetes. That's now the maybe more cloud-like. This is now something different that I can't really do myself on my own servers. So in this case, if I take it the Azure Kubernetes service from Microsoft, from Azure, Microsoft takes care of managing the masters for us. So there was the etcd, all of the stuff that was on Lucas's architecture in one slide. All of the parts that were in the master part, that's taken care of by Microsoft. So it's all upstream. It's the actual open source Kubernetes. It's just Microsoft that goes in and updates them. It's just Microsoft that goes in and does the upgrades, high availability, healing, all of that. I don't actually get even billed. So even if I don't want somebody, even if I'm okay doing the upgrading myself, just the ability to kind of skip the cost of the masters in the cluster is actually quite attractive in there as well. And they're doing some pretty nice stuff with that. With that, let's try to jump into demo. And I usually use several hands in my demo. Now I have only one. So let's see how this goes. So bear with me. I might cheat a bit with some copy paste just to make this a little bit more interesting as well. So first of all, as you see, I'm in my Windows 10, but I am using Windows subsystem for Linux. So this is actually Ubuntu on Windows 10. Interesting. I have some stuff here. You actually see this bit. I might do a little bit of zooming in here as well. So this is basically, this is not virtualization, this is actually running inside my Windows in here. So I'm not doing Windows containers, I have Docker for Windows installed, but I'm not doing Windows container demos here. This is actual containers. And let's zoom in a little bit. Is this okay? Can you see this, guys, in the back? Sure you can. Okay. So first, quickly, I'm going to show you that I'm logged in my Azure account, if I haven't been timed out. Let's cheat again. What did I typo? Yes, there we go. So I'm logged in. I'm in my Azure cloud environment. It's the name of my account. This is what I use to log in. And this is basically the same stuff that I get if I just go to the Azure portal and log in here. So this is all the same accounts. So I can go and see what resource groups do I have. Let's just use the history. It's a lot easier this way. I'm going to show you the stuff that you can see on the portal as well. So this is all the stuff that I can get with anywhere that I have a command line. You can get the tooling. It's basically just to install the AZ CLI, and once you have the packages installed, you can use this with anywhere. You can use it on your Mac. You can use it with your Ubuntu or whatever tickles your pickle, so to say. I can even, for some reason, I can even install this on my Windows, actual Windows as well. So here I'm using it on my Linux environment, but I can install it on my Windows as well. So let's get started with our first demo, because this is actually going to take a while. So I'm just going to steal this as a copy paste here, because even writing the five characters was too much for me. So what I'm doing here is the simple command line query, AZ, Azure Container Service, AKS, create obviously, group, we give it the resource group name, the subscription, the accounts, all of that has been taken care of before I logged in. Then I give it the name of the actual Kubernetes cluster. Then I give it the amount of nodes, in this case 1. Then I can type down the version. This is the specific version that I want here. I can go with the default as well. And then I select the size of the virtual machines that are given to me on this installation. So this is something that if I know already what I'm doing, I picked the right size. This is the scaling up or down, or scaling vertically. This is something that I cannot change later on. I can later on scale the amount of nodes, but this is something that I cannot do. And I'll just let it create me some SSH keys as it goes as well. And I still made a typo, however possible that is. Yes. Okay. So now it's getting started in there, so we can go actually to the UI and see what is actually happening in here. So in my resource groups, as you saw when I clicked refresh here appeared a new resource called whatever I typed a name here. It's still creating, so I get this sad crying little cloud in here. So it's going to take a while. It's somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes, but luckily I had this already created previously, so we can look at the previous one here as well. It's the same stuff that I actually typed in on my creation. Here's my Kubernetes version. Here's the specific node size. Here I can scale it up and down. I can do it here on the portal. I can say that, yes, please give me actually 2 nodes instead of 1, and I can do it here as well. What else? Once it is actually deployed, I can actually get the credentials. So I've actually gotten those already for the O2 cluster in here. So once I have done that, they're actually added to my kube config. So once I've done that, I can actually go ahead and browse to the if I want to, I can browse to the Kubernetes dashboard there as well. Let's create a new bash on Ubuntu on Windows, very meta topic. And let's run not the O3 because it shouldn't be up yet, but the O2 because it's already there. Okay, so now it's opening me a SSH proxy, SSH tunnel, and opening up my browser in there. And it is apparently handling the connection for me. However, handy dandy. Let's see what's happening. Let's try this again. Number 2. This is the fanless design that you hear, everybody. So opening up a Firefox is too much for my i7 laptop. So we can go to backup slides if you want to. But anyway, it will open the.
Just go to the Firefox and open the
Nope. Because my Firefox is installed in Windows. The tunnel is actually opened in the Linux side, so I actually have an X server that I am remoting to, or I should be able to remote to, but in this case, no. As they say on the native side, it worked on my machine. I do have a picture, but I don't think that's helpful for you. So what's going to happen, or what should have happened in this case, is that it should have actually popped up my Firefox from my Linux side and doing that as well. So we can actually see that this is still creating here. So we can actually see if we can actually close the wait and see if we can actually do it here. Just this one once again, and if not, then it just doesn't help us. There we go. And now I started my Linux Firefox from my Windows subsystem for Linux, and which was not the point of the demo. The point of the demo was to show me the Kubernetes dashboard that's running on my managed Kubernetes on my Azure. And there it is. It's a UI. Yay. There it is. We can actually get back to that as well. We see that the cluster is actually spinning up. It's still on the creating side. Oh, yes. The reason I wasn't able to open that one was, of course, that I was actually in the middle of my scaling operation that I showed you and put in place on my UI. Very good thing to do some unprepped demos in there. All right, it's going to spin up. We can do some stuff. We can deploy a service in there. Given that typing is very hard for me, you can try it out yourself. Basically, what you do is you pay for the amount of nodes that you use. Currently, there are not very many different sizes of VMs available for Western Europe, which is the one that I typically use. So just go with the smallest ones. They are pretty nice. This is what we did. You can get those on the meetup as well. The get credentials is the part that actually fetches merges those with my local kube config. We use the browse. I didn't show you the scale I showed that on the portal. It's very similar. You can look up the docs. I can do some upgrades, and that is actually something that I can show you. No. Only my shittiest cluster is up and running, so this is also something that I can leave to you as a homework, so you can actually go ahead and use the AZ AKS upgrade command to actually upgrade. I think the latest one is the 1.8 series, so within the major versions it actually updates itself, but from different versions you actually have to go and perform the upgrade manually yourself. Currently it is still in preview, so the 1.9 is not actually available here on the managed Kubernetes side. I still had to build my own using the other Azure Container Service for that. I use the AZ CLI. That's a tool that you can install yourself. I can actually also use shell.azure.com. Which Firefox is it? It's this one. So it's just literally shell.azure.com. It's the cloud shell for Azure. It uses the same credentials. The beauty of it is actually that everything is installed for me, so I don't have to worry about the different versions of Linux or Windows subsystems for Linux that I run. This always has the latest tools, so this is the easiest one to get started. What else did I want to show you? Visual Studio Code, also a great tool for creating your service deployments. There's a great set of extensions available if you want to be brave enough and actually work on your own YAML files. I actually use some other tooling, so the platform on top of platform. I use Helm charts for that, and actually when I do my development myself, I actually use Draft to actually create both of those, so both the containment and the service deployment as well. But VS Code is actually pretty neat nowadays, and all of those, both the AZ CLI, the shell, Cloud Shell, and actually the VS Code, they are actually open source as well. Funny thing, the shell.azure.com, this is actually also running inside a container as well, inside the Azure container instance. And that's why actually when it told me that it's getting reconnected, they actually didn't connect me to the same environment. It actually had killed already the container that I was in and created me a new one and mapped my persistent storage in there as well. All right, I'm almost out of time. You can go ahead and see all of the differences between Azure Container Service, Azure Container Service Engine, and Azure Managed Container Service up at GitHub. If you want to build an environment yourself, customize it, you can use that. You should use the Azure Container Service Engine, ACSE, which is basically just a Go script that creates YAMLs and ARM templates that create the underlying Azure infrastructure for you. All of the commands that I showed you the documentation are up at docs.microsoft.com. The plugins, the Kubernetes plugins for the Azure Container Instance are up there as well. And there's actually a great recording at the KubeCon last year where both Brandon and Gabe actually talk about both their past, why are they at Microsoft, why haven't they left yet, and what are they going to do for the rest of the community later on as well. So it's a pretty interesting podcast, maybe like 20 minutes or so, and it's actually even transcribed, so it's 5 minutes to read as well. With that, I have 1 minute. I'm end of my slides. We can go and see if something's happening with my cluster in there as well, but I'm actually very happy to take some questions as well. Yes?
Why were you using kubectl on a Linux container inside Windows?
So actually, I wasn't using Windows. So I'm using here the Windows subsystem for Linux. So this is actually native Ubuntu running natively within my Windows, quote unquote. It's not virtualized. I'm not inside a container or anything. Why is another question. Anything else? Awesome. Then I think there's plenty of more beer left, and then we have the last session, and then the free-form Q&A. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.